Hi everyone. So anyone who uses the Facebook channel or Instagram or Twitter or anything for the podcast will know that this video will be a review of Amy Macdonald's latest album, Under Stars. Pretty much hot off the press. Came out today, February 17th. And I've had an opportunity to listen to it a couple of times. And I just wanted to share my thoughts on the album with you, whatever they're worth. So I've been a fan of Amy Macdonald for 10 years now. I saw her for the first time back in 2007, shortly before or after the first album came out. I can't remember if it had come out yet. But she was on a bill with the likes of Aerosmith, Jet, Peter Gabriel, Crowded House. It was a really solid lineup. And she was playing quite far down the bill because she was just starting out. And me and my friend Phil went to check her out and thought she was absolutely awesome. And I've been a huge fan since then. So to kind of put it into perspective, I used to work on local radio shortly after I graduated from university, and This Is the Life was out, and it was pretty big at the time. I plugged it mercilessly. I'm going to take some credit for it getting to number one. At least record sales in County Durham of This Is the Life by Amy Macdonald. I'm going to hold my hands up and say that that was all me. A curious thing was the next album. I won tickets to the iTunes Festival in 2010. Had the opportunity to see her live at the Roundhouse. It was absolutely phenomenal. Even my wedding a couple of years ago, Life in a Beautiful Light, came out 4 years ago. I got married just under 2 years ago, and I was thinking to myself, I need some music to calm me down while I'm waiting for my wife to turn up, kind of while everyone's filtering in, and Amy Macdonald saying the natural choice. So our music's always kind of been around, either intentionally or accidentally, when kind of life's really good. And again, it's really funny because I'm due to become a father for the first time in July, and again, this album's come out, so it's almost as if kind of in this weird way that during the best times in my life that I'm listening to Amy's music, which is really cool. So yeah, so the album came out today, and I've had an opportunity to listen to it a couple of times. And I guess if you're watching this video, the main headline is that it's a great album, and it's it's great in the way that old Amy Macdonald fans will enjoy it, but it could kind of potentially bring some new fans into, which is, I guess that's the goal of any album, isn't it? That kind of you want to please your fan base, but you don't want to alienate them, but you want to bring in new fans too. I'm going to talk a little bit about that maybe in a blog post or a YouTube video. What's happening with Linkin Park at the minute is just so interesting with their new song. If you don't know much about that, their new song's called Heavy, and it's anything but. It's very much pop. Regardless of how how I feel about that, there are some Linkin Park fans who, their first couple of albums were very much metal and rock, and they've alienated a huge part of their fan base with this new track. You can't say the same for Under Stars, but at the same time, I say it will. I think it'll bring in new listeners and new fans. So I guess the main question to that is why, and I feel like with an Amy Macdonald album, you know what you're gonna get. You're not gonna get, she's not gonna sound like the Prodigy all of a sudden, but there is kind of a degree of kind of development and maturity. I think her albums have always been really mature. I think that's something that fans that she attracts an older fan because her songwriting is very mature and her voice is fantastic. I watched a video which I posted on the My Classic Album Facebook page, and it was her at Abbey Road Studios talking about recording the album, and she'd said that it had been a much more collaborative process this time. That usually, because she's a solo artist, she's a singer-songwriter, that she would write the songs and bring them to the studio and record them. Whereas now, she's been touring and recording with kind of the same set of people, and that she's brought them into that process. So if you look at the credits for Under Stars, it's the songs they're all written by Amy Macdonald, but there are other people on the songwriting credits. So it feels more like a collaborative effort. And when you listen to it, I think you can hear that. It's not as if there's loads of different voices going on like a Fleetwood Mac album, like we've been talking about in the latest episode of My Classic Album. But it just feels a bit more like she's kind of taken the best of everything that she's got access to and creating something really strong. So really strong songwriting and harmonies is kind of the main thing. And it's not something that you would normally get from an Amy Macdonald album. She's got a really strong voice in her own right, but anyone who knows me knows that I love harmonies. So like Queen are my favourite band. Def Leppard, Meatloaf albums, where he's got like the crazy choirs going on behind him. And there's some of these tracks have really nice harmonies on them. So it's great to hear her voice supported, by kind of a really strong kind of vocal harmony behind it. Standout tracks, obviously Dream On, the single, is great, and that's very much like your standard Amy Macdonald single. It reminds me of kind of This Is the Life and Love Love and that sort of thing. But there's some tracks on here that difference, not the word, because they're not, they're just, it's just progression, isn't it? It's so to look at Kate, so From the Ashes, which on this vinyl version is the end of side B, if you've got a CD, obviously just the end of the album, is really strong. It's very kind of atmospheric. I feel like she's tried in the past couple of albums, you'll hear bits where she's tried to do more with the studio than just kind of record, and there's kind of a bit of something going on, and that really comes through in this album, that she's wanting for it to be more than her just sitting in the studio with an acoustic guitar and playing. There's more to it than that, and that certainly comes through on this. Down by the Water, for me, and there's an acoustic version of this on the deluxe edition of the album, and streaming as well. So if you're streaming it on like Apple Music or Spotify, I think it's also on there. That's how I heard it. There's a few acoustic versions of songs on the album, but the acoustic version of Down by the Water, she released a couple of months early just to kind of get people kind of excited for the album. And it's, without being dramatic, I'd say it's probably one of the strongest songs, one of the best songs that she's ever recorded. There's just something about it that just feels quite epic, but it's very simple, quite poignant. And I was a bit apprehensive how a studio version of that would go, because I really loved this acoustic version that she'd come out with. But again, the harmonies are there. It's certainly a strong point on the album. And it's funny because I was reading an Amazon review that said that they thought it was a weak point, and I couldn't disagree more. But I guess that's the joy of music. Like, some people will love that, some people will hate it. Yeah, but I mean, any of them, to be honest, it is a really good album. I would go as far as say, and I've only listened to it a couple of times, I'll probably listen to it more, certainly one more time today. I would probably say that for me, it's a best album since This Is the Life. And that's no disrespect to the other two. I think they're great albums, and I have somewhat of an emotional connection to all of the albums. But it's just, there's something about it that's just, it's more collaborative. It's kind of pushing things a bit more without kind of alienating sort of the Amy Macdonald fans who've been there from the start. Because I imagine if she released an album she sounded like Prodigy, that people would instantly go, oh no, well no. Prodigy fans would love it, I guess. But yeah, so it's a strong album, it's a great album, and I would thoroughly recommend it. But I guess if you listen to my classic album before, or you've heard me talk about the music I like, that probably doesn't surprise you. So the best thing to do is just to judge it for yourself. So Under Stars is out now. You can get it on LP, you can get it on CD, you can stream it. There's an awesome deluxe edition floating around with loads of kind of extra bits and signed photos and all sorts, if you can get on board with that. And let me know what you think. If you listen to it and think that maybe I've oversold it, absolutely let me know. If you agree that you love the album, please let me know. You can comment below, of course, but you can get yourself to search for My Classic Album with Mike Norris on Facebook and like the page for all the goings on with the podcast and the YouTube channel, and just let us know what you think. Or you can follow us on Instagram at My Classic Album Podcast, or Twitter. I nearly forgot the Twitter just because I barely use it. So yeah, that is MCA_podcast, but I rarely use Twitter. So if you want to get in touch with me, Twitter is probably not the way to do it, but by all means give it a go. I'll probably pick it up eventually. The next episode of My Classic Album, speaking of kind of fantastic singer-songwriters, is dedicated to Joni Mitchell's Blue, and that was chosen by my guest Samantha Price, who is another fantastic singer-songwriter from the US. So if you like singer-songwriters, this is kind of the perfect time to be listening to My Classic Album. So please check it out. And I hope you enjoy it. And please let me know what you think, or if there's an album that you'd like to cover on a future episode, or if there's anything you'd like for me to, an album you'd like me to review on the YouTube channel, or anything like that. Please get involved. It very much comes from the listeners and the guests that I have on, the direction the podcast takes. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my review of this awesome album. I would thoroughly recommend you buy it now. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So see you soon.